Okay, so you have a file with multiple routes in it, possibly legs within a route, and you've decided you want to combine it into one route to send it to your GPS. Well, can I challenge that assumption? Because how much data do you want to send? I have an example of a route I've created here, which is Bynnickmore, standard route from Glenmore Lodge up that Monroe. What I've done is I've plotted the route fairly accurately, so I've followed the path up to signpost, put a waypoint there, I've hidden all the rest. You turn at the signpost, up to the bridge, site of the old Bynnickmore stables that have been removed. Carry on up the Larrigan Loig until there's a split in the track. When I first climbed it, this was a nice little grassy path you went up. Now it's a super highway, you can't miss it, and up to the top. So I have 4 legs, each with a load of waypoints. But I don't send that to my GPS, it's a total waste of time. Instead, what I've done is I've created a simplified one. All it has is a few waypoints, because along here you're following a path, difficult to get lost. Same here, can hardly miss it. The bridge is significant. Then following a path up again. If it's snowy and you can't see the ground, it doesn't really matter, it's pretty obvious where you're going to walk until you get to the point where it splits. You turn and it's obvious you're heading for the top, you can't miss it. So why do you need all those other waypoints? You don't normally walk with a GPS in your hand following the route on it. You print a map. If I close that, I can print a map with that route on it. Got something to follow, and I only need these few waypoints in my GPS, and they're easy to create. All I did was copy the start point of each leg from that into a new route, and then add on the end. That's it. So, do you really need to merge your routes to send to GPS? I'll admit I have heard of other occasions where there was a very good reason for doing it, and to that end I have produced a set of instructions in this demo video that shows you how to merge legs into one continuous route using GPSBabel. So nothing I've said has convinced you that you don't need to convert your file, you can manage the way it is. You've got 2 or 3 legs of route that you need to merge into one big route. You can do it, but you've got to come out of OMN to do it and use a product called GPSBabel. In fact, GPSBabel is the engine that sits under OMN for communicating with a GPS if it's serial or serial over USB protocol. Very nice package, very effective, very flexible. And the important point is that you can do a lot of things with it. In the filters, you can transform waypoints into a route, tracks into routes. In fact, you can take a route, reduce it to a set of waypoints, and then take that set of waypoints and turn it into another route. And this is basically what you do. You take the data that's output from OMN. See, you've got 2 legs. The legs are output sequentially, they're converted to just a list of waypoints, and then you take those waypoints and put them back in as a route. Fine. GPSBabel does it very easily. GPSBabel comes with a very nice user interface, and you can do an awful lot of things with it, but unfortunately this transformation thing that you need, you can't get to if you're using this. But you can run GPSBabel as a command line interface, and this is what you have to do. So I can close that down, and this is a batch file I've created that does the 2 steps, and this is where it gets a bit complicated. If you're not familiar with running batch files in command, it takes a bit of getting used to. But basically, you execute the program, tell it what your input file is, and you're passing it as a parameter. You're telling it you want to do the transformation. You're converting the routes to waypoints and getting rid of the original route, and you're outputting a temporary file. The next stage is execute the program again. Your input file is a temporary file. You're doing a transformation in the reverse direction. You're creating a route from waypoint, a list of waypoints. And again, get rid of the waypoints. You don't want them in the output file. There's the output file. So this is the batch file you have to use. I've parameterized it so you can pass in the input file and the output file. So now I'll show you first how to create this file here, the first one, and then how to actually run the batch to get your output file. So how do you actually go about converting a multi-leg route into one single route? Well, there's a bit of preparation work to do first. What you're going to do is create a GPX file, put it through GPSBabel, get another GPX file, put it through GPSBabel again, and get the resulting file. So you need somewhere to work. And what I've done is I've created a folder within my documents area called batch. And into that I've copied the batch file that has the GPSBabel commands in it, and I'll supply a link to this file so you can download it rather than have to type it in yourself. What you need to do is, having created this folder, call it anything you like, copy the batch file into it. That's the first stage. This is going to be your working directory, where you create your GPX files and the temporary GPX files and your output GPX file. So, to get it to work, you need to set up OMN so that when it writes a file, as it would to a GPS, it actually writes to that area on the disk. So you'll see here I'm set up for a USB disk drive, and I've changed my folder so it's pointing to that folder batch within my documents area. Reason for that is that if you chose to export a GPX file, you said that want to export that file in GPX format, there's two problems. One, you get the whole file, and if you've got more than one route in it, you get the second route, and I'll explain the problem with that in a minute. But more importantly, this GPX file contains a whole load of information that's peculiar to Anquet. Means nothing to a GPS, and if you try and put it through GPSBabel, it just can't handle it. It gets confused and gives up. So don't use export GPX file. What you need to do is to use the send to GPS, which produces a very much simplified file, basically just route information and basic waypoint information, none of the other stuff that Anquet uses, and it will work. So I've created a file with 2 routes in it. First one is legged, so that's the whole route. There's leg 1, leg 2, leg 3, which consists of leg 3 and leg 3A and 3B, 2 parts to it, and then leg 4. And if you were watching, you'll have noticed that leg 4 starts there and leg 3 ends there. There's a gap between them. But because Anquet assumes that having started a route, you're going to finish it, if it finds any gaps in the middle, it will fill them in. It works top to bottom, left to right, and it assumes that when you finish one leg, you're going to start the next leg, and if there's a gap, it'll draw a line in. Also, the fact that this line is thick and green, that's just the way I've set it up, so it's very obvious. It's not some fault in the application. You'll see I've got another route, just to show what happens if you have 2 routes. The thing is that if I exported the whole file, when it was flattened out to waypoints, I would get that string of waypoints round there, and then that string of waypoints. And when I created the route, it would start there, work its way around, then put a link from there to there, and go along to there, which is probably not what you want. So if you have a file with multiple routes, think about what you actually want to achieve. So in this case, all I want to do is flatten it out into one route. So I select that. I could use send to GPS, but I usually just use right click, send to GPS. That data has been successfully sent to the GPS. So when I go and look in this folder, batch, you see this file has appeared. It's got today's date and a sequence number. First one saved is 1. If I saved another one, it'd be 2, and so on. I can now rename that. A nice simple name. I'd advise you keep your name simple and avoid spaces. Otherwise you have to put quotes round it, because the technology you're using is pretty old and it's not very happy with spaces in names. In fact, it confuses it. You have to quote it if you use spaces in names. Keep the names nice and short. It saves typing as well. So there we have our input file. So we now need to convert it. And what you need to do is execute this batch file, and this you do using the command prompt. Depending on the version of Windows, there's different ways of getting the command up. I'm using Windows 8, so if I right click on Start, there's a Run option, and that pops up. I ran command recently, so it's there ready for me. But it might not have been there, it might be in the list, or if it wasn't, you just type CMD, OK, and that pops the Windows command prompt. Now, if you have a machine as it was delivered, the chances are you will be in your default directory, and you'll be able to go to documents and wherever you created the batch file quite simply. I have a machine that has multiple disk drives, and I have my user data on a separate drive, so I have to change drives and then change to the folder. So I'm now in the folder where it was. If you're in this situation where you don't have multiple drives, then the chances are it would be something like documents, batch, or whatever you happen to name the folder. You just do CD. But if I now do a directory, there you are, you'll see there's the batch file and there's the input file. So we're now ready to run the batch file. Remember I said I'd parameterized it so you can feed the names in. So there's my input file. Space and my output file, and I can call it anything I like. If it already exists, I've set it up that it would overwrite it. So dem one out. Good a name as any, keep it simple. Hit return and you'll see it's executed GPSBabel twice. Can I point out that this bit here where it says program files x86 GPSBabel, that's where the program is. I'm running a 64-bit version of the operating system, so you find program files brackets x86 is where old programs are put. If you're running a 32-bit version of the program, then you will have to go into the batch file and modify it to take out the x86, because that doesn't exist in the 32-bit system. You've only got to do it once. Once the batch file is fixed, it'll be okay from then on. But remember, you've got to do it twice. Take out the space bracket x86 if you're running a 32-bit version of Windows. So if we now go into the folder, you'll see there's two more files appeared. There's a temporary file that was used to create the flat list of waypoints, and there's the output file. So now, if I go back into OMN, close that file, and read in the file I created. So it's going to be import GPX file, documents, patch. There's the file I created, open it, and you'll see that I now have one single route with all the waypoints in it. The icons have gone to the default square blob, because it doesn't know what the icons are. In the process of converting it, it lost that information. The waypoint numbers are all over the place, because again it took them from each of the individual routes, just strung them together, and there's no name, but easily fixed. Use the edit function to give it a name, and then use multi-edit to renumber all the waypoints. Waypoints are numbered in sequence now, and you now have one single route. All the individual legs have been joined into one route. That's how it's done. That shows it's quite possible to take multiple routes, legged routes, and join them together into one continuous route. Bit of a pain, bit of a mess, I'm sorry, but fact of life for the way things are just now. Someday what I would love to do is produce something like GPSBabel interface, because let's face it, all you need is the name of the input file, name of the output file, And if you can do something like this where you have the sort of interface that lets you pick the folder and name the file, it's much easier. And then just a button that says go, OK. So basically you'd have file name, OK, cancel. So someday I may get round to doing it, or if anybody else out there feels up to it, be my guest. I hope this proved useful. It's one of those oddball things I'm going to produce that it's not strictly Anquet, but I've been there, done it, so hopefully it provides some help for you if you get into that situation.